On a warm Tuesday evening in late July of 2015, Mike Hansen was working his usual shift as a night watchman at the lumber mill in rural western Oregon. The mill, situated on the outskirts of the small town of Oak Ridge, was surrounded by dense Douglas fir forests that stretched for miles in every direction. Mike's job was to patrol the perimeter of the mill property, keeping an eye out for trespassers or any signs of trouble. At around 11:30 p.m., Mike was making his rounds near the eastern fence line when he heard an unusual sound coming from the woods. It was a deep, rumbling noise that was very out of place. At first, he reasoned with himself that it might be a large piece of machinery starting up, but he knew all the equipment had been shut down hours ago. Curious and slightly uneasy, Mike shone his flashlight towards the tree line where he thought the sound had come from. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the trunks of the massive firs. For a moment, he saw nothing out of the ordinary. Then, something moved. About 50 yards away, partially hidden behind a large tree, Mike spotted what looked like a massive fur-covered arm. It was much larger than a human arm, with long dark hair covering it from shoulder to wrist. As Mike watched, the arm moved, and a huge figure stepped out from behind the tree. The creature stood at least 8 feet tall, its body covered in dark, shaggy fur. Its head was shaped like a mix between a wolf and a bear, with a long snout and pointed ears. Horrifyingly, the eyes glowed an unnatural yellowish green in the beam of his flashlight. For several long seconds, Mike and the creature stared at each other. Mike's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The creature tilted its head, as if studying Mike, then took a step forward. That movement broke Mike's paralysis. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping his flashlight. The creature let out a low sound that seemed to vibrate the air around them, like how timpani drums can rumble. It was a sound that was part animal, part something else. Mike turned and ran, his boots pounding on the gravel road that circled the mill. He could hear footsteps pounding into the earth behind him, accompanied by the sound of branches snapping. It was obvious the creature was following him. As he ran, Mike fumbled for the radio clipped to his belt. He managed to press the call button and shouted into it. "This is Mike! There's something out here! I need help! Stat!" The radio crackled with static. Then a voice responded. "Mike, what's going on? Where are you?" Before Mike could answer, he heard a loud clamoring crash behind him. He risked a glance over his shoulder and saw that the creature had knocked over a stack of lumber. It was still coming after him, moving with surprising speed. Mike ran faster than he ever had in his life, heading for the main building of the mill. He could see the lights of the security office ahead. Just as he reached the door, he heard another growl, much closer this time. He yanked the door open and threw himself inside, slamming it shut behind him. The night supervisor, Bill, was there, looking confused and concerned. "Mike, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Mike, out of breath and shaking, managed to gasp out, "There's something out there, Bill. Something big. It chased me." Bill looked concerned and headed for the door. Even if he had any skepticism, Mike's face said it all. Mike followed, his legs still wobbly from the chase. They stepped outside, Bill leading the way. They searched the area where Mike had seen the creature, but found nothing except some broken branches and the knocked-over lumber stack. There were no tracks, no fur caught on the trees, nothing to prove what Mike had seen. As they walked back to the office, Bill said, "I believe you saw something, Mike, but I'm not sure it was what you think. Reasoning says you saw a bear or something, but don't be too hard on yourself." Mike nodded, still shaken. He knew what he had seen, but he also knew how unbelievable it sounded. As he sat in the office trying to calm down, he distracted his mind by just doing his job. For the remainder of his shift, Mike stayed in the security office, watching the monitors intently, mostly for any sign of the creature. He jumped at every shadow and sound, but nothing unusual appeared. As dawn approached, Mike reluctantly agreed to finish his rounds, accompanied by Bill. They patrolled the perimeter together, finding no further evidence of the night's events. In the days that followed, Mike struggled to make sense of what he had experienced. While some of his co-workers were skeptical, others shared stories of strange noises they'd heard in the woods at night too. Mike continued his job at the mill, but he never felt truly at ease during his night shifts again. Every time he patrolled near the eastern fence line, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him from the darkness of the forest. And to this day, it takes every ounce of his energy to complete those patrols. But what can you do? He thought. He is a dedicated employee and continues to do whatever is asked of him. I sure hope he gets past all of this. Let's wish him well. Private First Class Michael Reeves was assigned to patrol duty at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, on July 15, 2023. The fort, established in 1877, is a United States Army installation covering over 100 acres. The base is home to the U.S. Army Intelligence Center and the U.S. Army Network Enterprise Technology Command. Reeves, a 22-year-old soldier from Tulsa, Oklahoma, had been stationed there for 8 months. His patrol that night covered the eastern perimeter of the base, which borders the Huachuca Mountains. This mountain range there rises to an elevation of 9,466 feet at its highest point, Miller Peak. The night was warm, with temperatures hovering around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. The moon was nearly full, providing good visibility even without night vision equipment. Reeves carried his standard issue M4 carbine. He also wore a special pair of night vision goggles, a monocular device that amplifies existing light. Reeves began his patrol at 2200 hours, 10 p.m., starting from the east gate and moving counterclockwise along the perimeter fence. The fence itself is a 7-foot-high chain-link barrier topped with barbed wire. Motion sensors and cameras are placed at regular intervals along its length. For the first 2.5 hours, Reeves' patrol was uneventful. He observed typical wildlife, including a group of mule deer and a coyote. At just after midnight, he reached a point where the fence line passes close to the edge of a dense oak pine forest. At 0234 hours, 2:34 a.m., Reeves noticed movement in a small clearing about 50 yards ahead of him. The clearing, approximately 30 feet in diameter, was surrounded by emery oak trees and alligator junipers. Through his night vision goggles, Reeves observed what he initially thought was a large animal moving on all fours. Reeves's first assumption was that the animal was a black bear. Black bears, while not common, are known to inhabit the Huachuca Mountains. An adult male black bear typically weighs between 200 and 600 pounds and stands about 3 feet tall at the shoulder when on all fours. As Reeves approached the clearing, moving slowly and deliberately to avoid startling the animal, he realized that this creature was significantly larger than any bear he had ever seen or heard of. He estimated its height at the shoulder to be at least 8 feet, more than twice that of a typical black bear. Reeves stopped approximately 30 yards from the creature. He observed that it had a bulky, muscular body covered in dark fur. The fur appeared to be short and dense, unlike the shaggier coat of a bear. The creature's head seemed disproportionately small for its body size, with a short snout and small pointed ears. At this point, Reeves reached for his radio, intending to call for backup. However, he hesitated, concerned that any noise might provoke the animal. His radio was a standard issue handheld unit, capable of both encrypted and unencrypted transmissions. Suddenly, the creature turned its head and looked directly at Reeves. Its eyes reflected the moonlight, appearing to glow with an unusual green color. This eye-shine effect is common in many nocturnal animals, due to a layer of tissue called the tapetum lucidum, which reflects light back through the retina. However, most mammals' eye-shine appears red or yellow, not green. The creature then emitted a low, rumbling vocalization. Reeves described the sound as being felt more than heard, suggesting infrasound frequencies below the normal human hearing range. Some animals, including elephants and whales, are known to use infrasound for communication over long distances. The creature then rose up on its hind legs, reaching a height that Reeves estimated to be at least 12 feet. In this position, Reeves could see that its front limbs ended in long, curved claws, each appearing to be about 6 inches in length. Following his training, Reeves raised his M4 carbine and aimed it at the creature's center mass. He then shouted a warning, "Stop! Don't move!" The creature's reaction to this verbal command was unexpected. It tilted its head to one side, in a manner that Reeves described as almost curious. After this brief pause, the creature dropped back to all fours and began moving toward Reeves. Its gait was deliberate but fast, covering ground quickly despite its large size. Reeves began backing up, maintaining his aim on the approaching creature. At this point, Reeves keyed his radio and called for immediate backup. His exact words, as recorded in the official incident report, were, "This is PFC Reeves at Sector Echo 7. I have an unknown large animal approaching my position, requesting immediate assistance." As the creature closed to within about 15 yards, Reeves was preparing to fire. However, the animal suddenly changed direction, veering sharply to Reeves' left and disappearing into the dense forest. Reeves reported hearing the sounds of breaking branches and crushed undergrowth, indicating that the creature was moving at high speed through the woods. A quick reaction force arrived at Reeves' location within 5 minutes of his call. They conducted an immediate search of the area, but found no sign of the creature itself. However, they did discover unusual tracks in the clearing, where Reeves first spotted the animal. The tracks were photographed and measured. They were approximately 18 inches long and 12 inches wide, with 5 distinct toe impressions. The depth of the impressions suggested an animal of enormous weight. Plaster casts were made of the best preserved prints. Unfortunately, the tracks disappeared once they entered the rocky terrain of the hillside, making it impossible to follow the creature's path. A more extensive search conducted at first light revealed broken branches high up on trees and tufts of dark fur caught on bark and thorns. These first samples were collected for analysis. In the weeks following the incident, other soldiers reported similar sightings in the same general area of the base. Night vision camera traps were set up, but no conclusive photographic evidence has been obtained. The U.S. Army has not made any official statement regarding these incidents. Unofficially, various theories have circulated among base personnel. Some speculate about secret government experiments, while others connect the sightings to local legends of the Mogollon monster, a Bigfoot-like creature said to inhabit the nearby Mogollon Rim area. As of now, the true nature of what PFC Reeves encountered that night remains unexplained. The investigation is ongoing, with military and wildlife officials continuing to monitor the area for any unusual activity. On September 15, 2019, Mina Johnson, a 32-year-old wildlife biologist, was conducting a nocturnal survey of bat populations in Mammoth Cave National Park, Kentucky. The park, known for its extensive cave system and diverse ecosystem, was unusually quiet that night. Mina had been working in the area for 3 years and was familiar with the terrain and local wildlife. At approximately 11:30 p.m., Mina was setting up audio recording equipment near the entrance of a lesser-known cave system, about 2 miles from the visitor center. The air was cool and damp, typical for early autumn in the region. She wore a headlamp and carried a backpack with her research equipment. As she adjusted her instruments, Mina heard a rustling sound coming from the dense undergrowth about 50 feet away. Initially, she barely registered the noise since night sounds were common in the park. However, she eventually noticed that the noise persisted at a regular pattern and seemed to be moving closer. Mina turned her headlamp toward the source of the sound. The beam of light revealed a pair of eyes reflecting back at her. They were positioned about 7 feet off the ground, much higher than any known wildlife in the park. The eyes were large, round, and had a distinct yellow-green color. Startled but maintaining her composure, Mina reached for her camera. As a scientist, her first instinct was to document what she was seeing. Before she could take a photo, the creature emerged from the foliage, The being stood on two legs and was covered in dark, matted fur. Its body was lean and muscular, standing at least 8 feet tall. The head was disproportionately large compared to its body, with a pronounced brow ridge and a wide, lipless mouth. The creature's arms were unusually long, reaching past its knees, and ended in hands with elongated fingers tipped with sharp claws. Mina's scientific training kicked in, and she began mentally cataloging the creature's features. It didn't match any known species in the area, or, as far as she knew, anywhere in the world. The creature's movements were fluid and purposeful, suggesting intelligence. For several moments, Mina and the unknown being stared at each other. Mina noticed that it seemed to be studying her as intently as she was observing it. She slowly reached for her audio recorder, hoping to capture any vocalizations. As if sensing her movement, the creature suddenly let out a loud, deep bellow that echoed through the forest. The sound was unlike anything Mina had ever heard. Not quite animal, not quite human. It was powerful enough to make the leaves on nearby trees vibrate. Alarmed by the vocalization, Mina took a step back. In response, the creature advanced towards her. Its gait was odd, a mix between a bipedal stride and a quadrupedal lope. It moved with surprising speed for its size. Mina's training in wildlife encounters told her not to run, but the approaching creature's size and unknown nature made her instincts take over. She turned and sprinted back towards the main trail, her heart pounding in her chest. As she ran, Mina could hear the creature pursuing her. Its footsteps were heavy and fast, crashing through the underbrush. She didn't dare look back, focusing all her energy on reaching the clearing where her research vehicle was parked. After what felt like an eternity but was likely only a few minutes, Mina burst into the clearing. She fumbled with her keys, managed to unlock the car, and quickly got inside, locking the doors behind her. Her hands shaking, she started the engine. As the headlights came on, Mina caught a glimpse of a large, dark shape at the edge of the clearing. It stood there for a moment, then retreated into the darkness of the forest. Mina immediately drove to the park ranger station to report the incident. The rangers conducted a search of the area, but found no concrete evidence of the creature. They did, however, discover large, unidentifiable footprints and broken branches that suggested the passage of something much larger than the typical wildlife in the area. In the days following the encounter, Mina worked with sketch artists to create a detailed rendering of what she saw. She also submitted her audio recordings for analysis, though the results were inconclusive. The incident remains unexplained, and Mina continues to research and investigate, hoping to one day uncover the truth about what she encountered that night in Mammoth Cave National Park. Next up, we have a quick account of something seen decades ago, through a bedroom window. My stepfather lived in Southeastern Virginia when he was around 8 years old, near the edge of the Great Dismal Swamp. One night, as he lay in bed, he witnessed a startling sight through his bedroom window. The sky was either cloudless or exceptionally bright, though he can't recall if the moon was shining. He says that he saw a beast staring directly at him through the window. According to his account, he could see saliva dripping from its face, and its eyes were fixed on him. The creature was standing on its hind legs and had matted fur in cream, red, and brown colors. Its face resembled a wolf's, but with distinctly human-like features. The jawbones were high, and the structure around its eyes, as well as the eyes themselves, appeared human-like. He believes the eyes were yellow in color. Terrified, he crawled out of bed and ran straight to his mother's room. The next morning, when they inspected the area around the house, they found disturbed ground under all the windows, and grass had been pulled out. Under his window, there were scratches in the wood, and some paint was missing. Curiously, they couldn't find any discernible footprints. Our family takes this story seriously. The area around there, the Great Dismal Swamp, covers a vast area spanning southeastern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina. Much of it remains largely untouched by humans. Only in recent years have researchers begun to study its inhabitants more thoroughly. The swamp's terrain is wet and mossy, which absorbs sound effectively. There have been reports of people entering the swamp and never returning. The mysterious nature of the Great Dismal Swamp, with its unexplored areas, certainly could be a breeding ground for these creatures. To this day, we still have no idea what exists and is even thriving deep inside. The thought alone is chilling.